Hey everybody, we're back again with our playlist, Old Friends, Music Never Ends. This is our third episode, I believe. All three of us, Mike and Dave Duke, Mike Anderson. Here we're back again, and this week it's all about the horns. As we're doing this list, uh, I found it really fascinating that in our selections, it spans from the 40s. We have one from every decade, from the 40s all the way up to 2022. So it just goes to show you how important horns have always been a part of music, part of rock and roll. Obviously, a part of music, since classic music kind of uses horns. But it's pretty amazing, and it's pretty amazing that we all chose different songs from different eras. So that's what made it. Every time I listen to this playlist, I think, man, there's a wide variety of music on this. And of course, as always, we've missed some, and some people might think, hey, why didn't you have this, or why didn't you have that? I'll point out that I think the most glaring one, other than maybe an Earth, Wind, and Fire or someone like it, is Miles Davis. I don't know why we don't have a Miles Davis on here, but we kind of agreed no instrumental. Without further ado, enough to dwell on that incident. I picked the playlist this week is "Funky Good Times," and it's the first song. Although, actually, the first song really it's called "Done to Death." Is kind of the official name of it. But most people and myself, and I think everyone's kind of said, is "Funky Good Times" by James Brown. And it's just one of those songs that, James Brown is one of the forefront leaders of funk and soul. He's Godfather of Soul, but he's also one who kind of introduced this funk with these horns. And of course, Maceo Parker on this song is really good. And there's a lot of great live versions if you listen to it. And this is just one of those. And of course, Maceo Parker is prominently featured, and he'd become really instrumental going on with Parliament and some other groups. So that was my first choice. I hope y'all enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did, Mike. Yeah, I did. Actually, I love James Brown. My knowledge is somewhat limited to greatest hits type of collections and things I heard other people play, but I know a lot of the older stuff and love that stuff. And this is, I guess, a newer one. It's also live and it has a real fresh sound. I like the kind of the shuffling blues thing going there. And gosh, I'm trying to remember. Well, you mentioned Maceo. I love it in recordings when he yells out Maceo. He did here a couple of times, and that's, I guess, he played some sax on there. But yeah, it was a great song. I actually wish it was a little longer. It was a real good group. So thanks, Jose.
Well, I got to do it. Ow, I feel good. That's we all know that one. James Brown. He's the godfather of soul. He was always off in the distance for me. It was never one of those things where I went, "Oh, I got to listen to James Brown." Yeah, some greatest hits and that kind of thing. But for the most part, I just thought of him as just this super icon that again, godfather of soul. But I did a little research and found out how much he was like. He had like 17 number one hits on the R&B charts, and that's amazing. And he was just cranking them out in his day. Another thing I noticed a little bit later is you have an artist called Louis Jordan and the Timpani Five that's coming up in a little while. And one of the facts was that he was actually inspired to be an entertainer after listening to that band, and that's what kind of spurred him to want to do that when he was really young. The other thing is he lived a hard life. He had a lot of ups and downs in his life, and but it was good to see that he performed at the Super Bowl. I remember seeing that in 1997. And then one thing I didn't realize is, how long has the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame been in existence? I didn't know when it had started or whatever, but as I was reading some of the bio on him, that he was actually part of the inaugural 1986 induction into that hall. So that's a kind of neat thing as well. But yeah, I love the funk, and I got down on it, and great way to start the playlist for sure. All right.
Long version. Hold on. Long version, Mike. You can just listen to any of the live stuff, and there's a 13-minute version of it. So, okay, Dave, sorry, popping in there.
No worries at all. So the next selection then was mine, and I don't know if I went safe or what, but I'm thinking horns, and I went with a band called Blood, Sweat, and Tears, who were known for their horns. And this was in 1968. It was their second album that they had put out, and so they were just starting to get their feet. It did win a Grammy, by the way, for the album of the year. And when I looked at to see who it beat out, I was a little bit surprised. It beat out the Beatles' Abbey Road, The Fifth Dimension, Age of Aquarius, Johnny Cash at San Quentin, live at San Quentin, and a favorite of mine, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Crosby, Stills and Nash album. So he beat out some pretty big. They beat out some pretty big names at that time. Another interesting thing was it was produced by a guy named James Greco, and he actually went on to produce Chicago's second album as well, which we'll get to later in the playlist. But he won a Grammy for Chicago for album of the year also right after that. So he was kind of a hot producer at the time and knew what he was doing with the horns and everything. They've had other hit songs as well, Spinning Wheel, God Bless the Child, and things like that. They kind of faded out though in the mid 70s. It was just kind of like, well, they weren't a big thing anymore. So they had their moment in the late 60s and early 70s where they were really popular, but they weren't able to carry it on beyond that.
To carry on. No, I always enjoyed the song immensely. It was one of those songs on the radio, like you said, 68, but when I was listening, when you listen to AM radio and you hear always the usual, the Beatles, then all of a sudden this song came on and it was like, whoa, this is completely different from all the other songs in terms of, the tempo and those kind of things. When you're at that young age, you're not used to hearing that kind of stuff. And like I said, the horns and then the whole little Western motif type of thing, which is always interesting to hear. And of course, then as you got older, the lyrics are just, when I die, does he really want to die? He talks about dying, but he's living. And so, just a great song overall.
Yeah. I don't know a lot about Blood, Sweat, and Tears either. I do remember those ones that you mentioned. This is probably of those as my favorite. There may be another one or two I can't think of right now. And I like it. It's nice to hear. I don't hear that much. I don't really listen to oldies stations. In fact, I hardly listen to radio anymore. Yeah, you mentioned the Western motif. I was thinking about this today, listening to it, and I can picture like something out of the musical Oklahoma, and a bunch of people like in their kind of pioneer garb, and like he's got like suspenders on, and he's doing his thing, and then but then he goes into this like kind of gospel, this like fast like don't want it. I can't remember the lyrics, but. And that's just kind of interesting, But when I first heard it after not hearing it for a long time, I'm like, okay, the part about when I'm gone, one child will be left to carry on, or what? That's not exactly it. So I was like, is that about reincarnation? I'm not exactly sure what he meant by that. I doubt it, but something to throw out there. Anyway, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Wow.
And
I just interpreted that as, him coming to rationalization of death. Anyway, might get too deep there, but because he's always talking about dying. I don't want to, and then all of a sudden, well, I can rationalize it because it becomes upbeat. I don't want to rationalize it. When I die, there's one child to carry on. So in effect, oh, I'm going to die, but there's someone to replace me, so to speak. Which, okay, is that too deep?
So long as he dies. She said, so long as he dies naturally, that's it.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
I guess gunshot or, whatever back in the Old West. A lot of ways to not die naturally back in the Old West. So mine was next. Mentioned Louis Jordan a minute ago. And if you didn't get enough of death in the titles, mine is Jack, You're Dead. This is kind of a thing that we've done back in the days when we were doing tapes, or somebody might riff off another person's, theme of their song. And so, maybe sometimes I get a little carried away. But anyway, Louis Jordan, I love his stuff. I first heard of him through songs like Ain't Nobody Here But Us Chickens and Beans and Cornbread, all kind of novelty songs in a way, but he's a good sax player, and a lot of the format that he used in his music, kind of like I think call and response in some songs, kind of things that went into rock and roll in the early days of rock and roll. And so he's credited as being one of the kind of, I don't know, forefathers, if that's too strong a word. But I was going to say something else about him. Also the earliest kind of videos. I forget what they were called exactly, but they would make these little movies. There'd be a little, I mean, it'd be short, like a long form video. There'd be a song in it. There'd be a little acting and some comedy or whatever. And they did that for, I don't know if they did this song actually, but I'm just throwing that out there. And they used to, I think there were machines that you could go look at them in. They might have even shown them in theaters. But anyway, this song, it's obviously, silly. It's like basically, go live. Don't miss it when a girl is giving you the signal or whatever. And so it's fun. It was just a fun little song. So thanks.
Yeah, I thought it was way cool. Obviously the jazz era, the 30s and 40s and early 50s, before rock and roll really kind of came into form. Everyone was listening to this kind of stuff. And one of the things I read about him, though, was that he didn't really have the commercial success at all. In fact, he got into a lot of trouble with that, and wasn't able to pay some of his tax things that he had, and it just is really tough on him. And I think one of the more established artists ended up talking to the record label and said, "Hey, we need to help Lewis out here," and they gave him like a check for like $20,000 to help cover his debts and stuff. So they were kind of trying to take care of one of their own. And but yeah, I thought it had a great vibe to it. One thing though, when I put the song on my playlist, I think I picked the wrong one originally. I know you had the playlist for us, but I kind of went to Apple and picked the thing, and for whatever reason I came across a Joe Jackson cover of it in 1999. So I heard it the first time I heard it, I said, that doesn't sound like, and then I went back and played the original though, and it was amazing how true to form Joe Jackson was, even with the original. So I thought that was kind of neat. If you get a chance, check out the Joe Jackson version.
Oh yeah, that sounds interesting. Yeah, of course I was not familiar with any Jordan. Obviously you've heard that kind of music. We joked when we were picking them about boogie woogie kind of music, and it has some elements in that, but it really isn't. You can see it's the forefront, because this is the earliest song on here. It even predates the one of the songs earlier, but from 1946. So you can tell this is kind of one of those bridge coming out of the World War II, that kind of stuff. Them making their mark. So yeah, this was a great song, and I love that it fit in with a Dave song. And anyone who can use red corpuscles in a song, they've got my vote. So, okay, so we go all the way from 1946 to 2019 with Turquoise. Now, I know you guys probably have never heard of Turquoise. And the song is Life in the City, but Turquoise was introduced to me by my friend, Alan Diorio, and I call him my mentor, because he's really he's a vendor who does a lot of festivals, sees a lot of music. He was on The Dead. He did a lot of Fish shows. So he was kind of my mentor, and he turned me on to a lot of music. And part of that is horns, they transcend all music. So of course he said, "Hey, you need to check out this band called Turquoise." And it's like a 9-piece. And we'd see them in these little clubs, and they could barely fit on the stage. But man, when that sound came out, man, it was just, it just came at you, like the wall of sound. It was just, and so electrifying and so fun to watch in these small clubs. And I say I've had 4 or 5 moments in concerts where the music has really taken me a different place, not to sound all philosophical or Eastern philosophy, but at a Turquoise, they were just, and the crowd was into it, and you could feel what I like to call the energy of both the crowd and the music all together in one. It's just one of those moments where you're like, oh my God. And so unfortunately, you can't go see Turquoise because they just broke up recently. But I would check out their music, and it was fun just to go to their concerts. So that's why I picked one of these, and just love the music itself, and the sound. Like I said, really comes at you.
Yeah, thanks, Jose. I'm still trying to figure them out. It's definitely a very full sound, and I'm curious how the singer's voice is like that. It sounds like it's either him going through some kind of digital thing, or are there multiple people like harmonizing like that? Because if it's that, that's just amazing. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
there
just
are
really
multiple people, and it's two women as well who are part of the group. So that's kind of
Wow.
why you have that kind of sound, that kind of voice. So, and they do a lot of covers of Talking Head songs. So
Really? Okay. Well, two reasons. It just jumped up a couple of notches in my opinion. But I like it. I'm still kind of, like I said, I'm kind of figuring it out, but it definitely was a good sound. So thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't even familiar with this group at all, but I liked the song, and so much so that I wanted to listen to some more of it. So I started banging through a couple of the other songs and to see if their style was the same, or if this was a one-off or whatever. And that guitar vibe is there all the time. I like the fact that, yeah, it's a big band sound. You mentioned they broke up recently as well, but I was going to throw in the Talking Heads plug as well. I started reading about them, and they said that they worked a lot with the Talking Heads, especially on Remain in the Light, and during that period in the early 1980s. And so there's a connection there with that band for sure. All right, the next selection was Catch 22, and for me, this is one of the ska punk band kind of thing. And they're formed in the late 90s, 1996. They come out of New Jersey. I didn't know any of that until probably about 10, 12 years ago. And one of my sons put a song on, and I went, "Who is this? Wow, this is way cool." And I think in the day as I was growing up, I wish I would have been more into punk, because I think I've really appreciated what it is now years later. And so maybe I didn't listen to it a lot when it was coming out, but now I really like that sound, the energy, the vibe of it. And then when you add the horns and the things to it, it just makes it rock for me. One thing I did learn about this band, though, is the lead singer, I think it's pronounced Thomas Kalnaki, was the founder and the leader of it, but he was only on it for one album, and then he broke off and actually took a couple of members with him and started a band called Street Life Manifesto that is equally as good, I think, as Catch 22. And so they've actually have not been a band, Catch 22, since about 2012. They've done a couple little things here and there, but they're sort of inactive. They didn't say they broke up yet, but they're really not together producing new material and that kind of thing. But again, I dig on their music, and hopefully you enjoyed the track. I think you'll probably maybe find there's some other songs I'll put on later on, because I really kind of like this band.
no, I'm a ska man. As you'll see, one of my selections later on. But this song really, because I think when we were first picking it, I played that live version. It was more punkish than this studio version. So when I heard, when I first heard, I was like, "Is this the same song?" And then when I listened to it, this song spoke to me on a lot of different levels. I mean, first of all, the lyrics, everyone can identify with the lyrics of having that girl that you like, but you don't want to approach, and she's maybe too good. And of course, the way they sang it, with the guys in the background, said, "Hell no!" Yeah, just little things like that made this whole song just. Like I said, I was telling them earlier off camera that this was my favorite song off the whole thing. Every time I start walking and hear this song, I was like, "Oh yeah, this," and oh my god! And again, it takes you to a lot of different things. The girl you didn't think, but also the music, the trumpet coming in at the end. It's just, I thought it was such a great song. I'm glad you turned me on to this.
Yeah, I love ska, and most of us have had similar experiences. I've had quite a few in high school, and I'll just leave it at that. I maybe wasn't quite as I don't know. I like that. Like I said, I like the ska. It just didn't really click with me. I can't tell you why. Um, it just, I need to hear more of their stuff. At one point, this is kind of a joke, but I was like, this guy's a stalker. He's like following her in the hallway at school, and
Right.
he's like
But
now bitter and looking back on it, and he's still carrying that torch. I'm like, dude,
yeah,
calm down.
actually, he comes to grips with it because remember he goes into the whole thing and then he says 117, not the day he saw her with the guy, and she's like, why did I even bother with this girl? So I think he comes like we all do. We go through that whole phase of, oh, look, I can't, and then we all have that awkward moment. We're like, hey, she actually talks to you, and you're like, oh, dear God, she's talking to me. This is great. But it doesn't go really your way. You get all stumbly. And then at the end, he remembers the exact date. And of course, he's like, oh, yeah, that's right. Why did I bother with this girl? And that it all happens to us. We see someone with another girl, a guy. We're like, oh yeah, why'd I bother? Why'd I do this whole time? And we do get that stalkerish kind of feel for it. So again, I maybe I'm just biased that I love this song, but I just thought, yeah,
No,
Once again,
fair
once again, I forgot to introduce the name of the song. We've been talking about it, but it's actually called Christina. She don't even know I exist. And
right.
so,
Yeah. Again, I had that experience, not just in high school, but again, we'll leave it at that. I have somebody who knows I exist now. Anyway, but yeah, okay, it's fair enough, and you're right about the ending. That was as much a joke as anything, but
Right. And he even says it's her loss. It's her loss not knowing me.
I know, but that could be bitterness too. That could be sour grapes. Well,
Well, yeah, but it's also could be like, yeah, I didn't really need you. And look what I've done. I'm in a band. What are you doing? Although she could be a multimillionaire.
yes, that could have been Michael Dell with her at the wherever he sees her.
Mike, I will say that if you like the ska and you like the real upbeat ska, this was actually a slower kind of a thing, and it's still upbeat, but they have ones that just go a mile a minute, and the drums are just freaking out, and the horns are just. I mean, they have ones that you almost can't keep up with it because it's so fast. You can't catch the lyrics because it's so fast. So if you check out some more of them, in fact, the one song my son first turned me on to was called "What Goes Around Comes Around." It was off their second album, and that's the song that hooked me originally.
Okay, well, very good. I will check it out. I've actually, I think about everything we've done so far on these. I want to explore more. Some I already have. Speaking of relationships with women, my next song is by Beck. It's called Deborah. I read. I've tried not to do too much research this time to not get bogged down, which I tend to do. But he recorded he put this song together and hadn't quite recorded, or maybe he recorded and hadn't released it. But when Odelay came out, and he thought it really didn't kind of fit with the whole. I keep using the word vibe, but it's kind of a mellower, whatever. It just didn't mesh with the sound. But he toured playing it, and it was like apparently immensely popular. He would start building like shows around this, like in the middle, because he knew the crowd loved it. So it's obviously a joke, and a lot of his stuff is like that. He's parodying somebody or whatever. This guy, who I'm assuming is not actually Beck, that he's describing in the song, is a real smoothie. I mean, I guess we've all been there, falling in love with a girl at the department store, maybe not J.C. Penney's. In my case, it was Sears. Definitely not Dillard's. They were out of my class, and they wouldn't even let me into. But it's funny. It's a little obnoxious, sure, but I like the sound. If nothing else, if you don't laugh to the lyrics, that's how ridiculous this guy is. I like the horns and this kind of smooth, kind of baby kind of music. So anyway, that's all I got for that one.
Well, I'm quickly becoming a Beck fan. I liked the song. I liked how you went with the girl theme right after my listed one. That was brilliant. And then this was just so. I think I had to write down a couple of dripping with love and ooze, and I mean I love that. It was like, you just felt it. I started getting goosebumps because of it. Love the voice. I love the lyrics. A couple of the lyrics threw me. I'm like, what's Zanku chicken? I don't know what that is.
I looked that up because, he has a tendency in some of his songs just throw out these weird terms or phrases. Like, where the heck did that come from? I thought every time I'd heard it until I looked at the lyrics yesterday, I thought he was saying Sanka chicken. I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? We should do a list sometime about misunderstood lyrics, but anyway, that's another thing. It's a restaurant, I think, in LA. So I think he's trying to impress her with this place. He's gonna to take her to eat when he picks her up in his Hyundai and whatever. But it's a restaurant.
Yep, Dave frees up.
I think Dave may have.
Okay, so we can talk about it. Nah, it was. I'll talk to them. We can always edit it back. We have. No. I love this. This song is great. It's Barry White impression. Is how I kind of, but obviously Barry White's the master. But it just goes to show you Beck always took chances, and when he took chances like that, this is, let's face it, like you said, it's kind of a parody, but it really isn't. It was like Dave said, it oozes with that kind of love doctor kind of thing. So lost Dave here for a second, but I like the song a lot, and I think I even saw him play the song when I saw him in concert, because it wasn't off Old Lane. And all of a sudden this song came on. It was like, what is this? Where'd this come from? So his work with the Dust Brothers was always fantastic, and had that album as well. So yep, great choice. And I like, of course, the theme. We have the stalker and the smooth operator.
Although in another light, that guy could maybe also be a stalker. I don't know. I'm still not sure his intentions are totally pure. But
okay.
Do we
want to wait? We want to wait. We can wait.
Pause and wait for Dave.
Yeah, let's pause. We can
do this.
Pause. Yeah. Okay. Okay, little technical difficulties there, even if we might edit it out or not edit it out or do whatever we want, because it's our podcast or our YouTube channel. So anyway, back to the fun. I picked another newer song, came out in 2022. This again was another group that Alan introduced to me. It's called Lettuce, and the song is called Change the World. And this is another one of those groups that just is horn centric. And it comes at you, a lot of funk. It kind of carries the tradition of all the other groups that have come before them, from James Brown to Parliament to Earth, Wind and Fire to the Commodores. And this is kind of the 2022 version of these guys. And seen them in concert 3 or 4 times, and they are fantastic. And if you ever get a chance to go see them, I also like the lyrics, change the world, you got to change yourself, So I thought it was a great song, and, just trying to give some newer feel to, because we have a lot of older songs that, this is still pretty prevalent in especially in the jam band scene. For some reason, jam bands, not that they have the exclusive rights to horns, but they're this kind of group that kind of carries on that tradition that has been established. Mike,
it's me. It is me. I'm sorry, I lost. Hi,
we're having fun today.
We're gonna edit this part out too. I got mixed up on the order. I said I wasn't gonna do that this time. Well, there you go. That's why it's so much fun. So I like this one a lot. I am not familiar at all with Lettuce, the band, but I thought it was a really good group. A lot going on there. Great message. I mean, I'm always, I listen to Radiohead. Okay, not always a great message there. Love their music, but this is just like, it's a great message. And I believe I heard a xylophone in there. Am I correct?
That's right. That is correct.
Keyboard or xylophone, and also then later a clarinet in addition to the horns. And I think I may have heard some cowbells or something. Anyway, they really they really cover it. It's really cool. I mean, it's just a great. It reminded me a little bit of Earth, Wind and Fire, maybe without the falsetto. I'm forgetting his name now. The other guy, the other singer. Anyway, so yeah, good one. appreciate it.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with it either, but I liked it. Who doesn't like lettuce, right? But it had a good message, a great, cool, funky vibe, and that classic horn sound. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought, like you said, it felt like a classic Earth, Wind, and Fire song or something like that. So yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, and you can still see them. Unlike Turquoise, they're touring right now, so you get a chance to see them. And they've won a Grammy before earlier in their career. So if you ever get a chance to see them, I would highly recommend it.
Well, then I went into the next one was Billy Joel, and I chose a song called Zanzibar off the 52nd Street album. Billy Joel was popular all through the 70s and into the 80s. This was written and produced in like 1978 by the producer Phil Ramone, and it went on in 1980 to win a Grammy as well for Best Album. They had other hit songs off this one that got more airplay: My Life, Big Shot, Honesty, things like that. But this was a throwback to, he wanted to create something that would would have the jazz feel. The name of the album, 52nd Street. So he wanted to pay homage to some of that. So a couple of the songs on the album do that. And this was the one where it was kind of interesting though too. It's not necessarily a when they talk about Zanzibar and he was trying to write the song, he said, well, he could make it a jazz place or he can make it something else. And there's I guess a sports bar that's called Zanzibar as well. And so he focused it on sports and love and that kind of thing. So the lyrics really jump out at you. Right from the beginning, he says, Ali dances and the audience applauds. Though he's bathed in sweat, he hasn't lost his style. So he's talking about Muhammad Ali and people watching Muhammad Ali on the TVs in this bar, Zanzibar. And then the second verse, he goes into, he says, Rose, he knows he's such a credit to the game. And he's talking about Pete Rose. And at the time, maybe he was a credit to the game. I don't know if he wants to go back and cancel a little bit now that he knows that Pete Rose bet on baseball and is out of baseball. But I like the line, Rose, he knows he's such a credit to the game, but the Yankees grab the headlines every time. The Big Red Machine had their heyday, and then the Yankees after that took over for a couple of years and won some World Series. And so I thought that was neat. And then the last line where he talks about, me, I'm trying just to get to second base, and I'd steal it if she only gave the sign. Just great lyrics all the way around on that. And then after all of that, then they launch into the trumpet solos and stuff at the end. And I think Freddie Hubbard is the guy that's on the flugelhorn and on the trumpet, and just got a great jazz feel to it.
No, this song really takes you into that. It really takes you into that sports bar. And of course, I'm a little partial to sports. I kind of like sports myself, and I kind of like baseball, and I kind of like Pete Rose. I don't think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm just going to throw that out there. But anyway, I kind of like sport. But back to the song. No, it's such a great song. It's not something that you normally expect, obviously, from Billy Joel. Dave was kind of the one who turned me on to Billy Joel. He was the kind of one who had all the albums, and most of the songs we hit were the piano influence on, obviously Piano Man, Captain Jack, and all that other stuff. But this one takes you to a different place, and it takes you to that sports bar. You find yourself sitting there, and how he seems like he's kind of just isolated by himself there. He's not really intermingling with anybody, but he's watching it from a distance. He's watching it, and I can truly identify with that, being a former sports reporter. So no, I enjoyed this song a lot.
Yeah, I did too. To be in total candor here, I really kind of grew tired of Billy Joel into the later 80s and early 90s. He did some stuff that just didn't appeal to me. But he's a tremendous piano player, composer, songwriter, and he did actually, he did some stuff with Elton John and some other things that were really good. But this was in his prime, what was I going to say? I really I like the whole Zanzibar, and I was trying to figure out at first because he also mentioned Shantytown. I'm like, okay, sounds like more like Jamaica or somewhere in South Africa or whatever. What is? But then he's talking about this. Clearly, it's a bar or a club. I wasn't really sure because he talks about I have a jazz guitar. Um, I didn't. When before I listened to the song, I didn't remember it. But then the I guess the chorus kind of has that hook. I've got my dad, the old man's car. I've got jazz guitar. It's like I remember that from back in the day. I like that part back in the day, and so it's like, yeah. And then I'm like, okay, this is a good song. Not that I had doubts earlier. And also one other thing. Again, I tried not to tried not to research it again too much, but he had either he or somebody else in his band said that part of the way he wrote some of the song was kind of in an homage to Donald Fagen, the piano player slash partial composer and singer from Steely Dan. And I think it must have been, there's a part, it's kind of a little, I don't know if you call it bridge, but a little kind of stair stepping down instrumental part before he goes back into something else. And that sounded, when I heard it before I read that, to me, I'm like, wow, that sounds like Steely Dan, something they would do. So anyway, I appreciate you bringing the song. And I'm next, so I'm not going to drop the ball this time. So I went a little bit different direction, I guess. It's Talking Heads, which makes 2 song playlists in a row that I've had the Talking Heads, but I'm standing by it. This one, definitely, if you listen to the playlist, clearly the horns are front and center. And I love this song. I love it as much for if there weren't lyrics. I just love the sound of it. You know, I didn't look up who all he brought in, but that kind of stuff was not typical for Talking Heads up to that point. And you know, there might have been some here or there, but that was really kind of it wasn't the hit on the record. I don't know if that record even had a hit, but it was their last record. And you can kind of hear the roots there of what he was going to do in the future, because he really got into, I don't know if his first solo album, maybe his second, it's called Ray Momo, and it's all songs influenced by Latin American music, Brazilian music, Cuban, I don't know Cuban, but I'll get to that in a second. But anyway, and they all have horns, and then his kind of tongue-in-cheek and whatever lyrics. This one is clearly about just like an average Joe who has his day in the sun, and some pretty funny imagery. You picture this guy kind of at a sales business convention or whatever, partying, kind of the lampshade on the head, but everybody has their moment, or many people have their moment. And in every group, there's somebody who, for at least a little while, rises to be that guy. They may annoy you, but they're that guy. And so that's the guy in this song and whatever this event is. The other thing I was going to say real quick, he went on to do this whole label called Luwaka Bop. I think they're still putting stuff out, but basically he would get music from Brazil, specific artists from Brazil, or compilations, music from Cuba from like back in the 50s, up to more contemporary, a lot of other countries. I think he, in this hemisphere, but I think he even did some stuff over in, from Africa, or maybe even other more Middle Eastern places. And you can really, if you heard that and then heard this, you could see there was that was where he was going. And I guess he decided to leave the Talking Heads behind. So.
Well, again, I would just say keep playing Talking Heads, Mike, because I'm being exposed to more and more of them. I only knew a handful of songs and the MTV generation for them, but I could see how talented they really are, and that they can spread out and do other things that aren't once in a lifetime and burning down the house, kind of things. But I liked the song. I liked the feel of it. And I think it was, it came out in 1988. So that was kind of a time where we were all pretty much in college, right, or finishing up college at that time. And so this was a neat track. I'm not sure what the title of the album "Naked Monkey" means, but I actually liked it. I caught myself staring at the monkey quite a bit on the album cover, and but I like the song. I like the Mr. Jones. I kind of wish I had gone after that with a Me and Mrs. Jones, a soulful thing, and it has horns in it. Probably would have gone real good, but I wasn't the next selection. It was Jose, so I passed on that. But that's one of those playlist regrets. I think it would have paired real well with it.
Now, obviously, I'm a huge Talking Heads fans, and as we speak, I guess they've agreed to do a reunion coming up to talk about Stop Making Sense, the movie. They're going to reunite to talk about it, a little Q&A session. Always exciting when those four can get together because they've had some, they've parted ways, not on the best of terms. But so anyway, that's just the news there. But yeah, actually, the first time when I hear this song, I feel, and I know this is kind of a stretch, this would be the kind of group that would be playing in Zanzibar. So every time I hear Zanzibar and then I hear Mr. Jones, I'm like, yeah, that's the group that's playing at this bar, this club. That's the kind of group that would be playing. Anyway, it's a kind of a stretch, and it's what it's what I transcends me to. And I was like, oh yeah, those two fit hand in hand because they have a similar feel. And I don't want to call you out, Dave, but I think this came out in 1980. And the only reason I point that out is because this was kind of the forefront of everyone else doing this. Peter Gabriel, Paul Simon. And so I'm pretty sure it came out at night, but we can double check that. But it was part of that it was part of that whole, all of a sudden this wave became of Peter Gabriel using African.
That makes more sense than in that early 1980s time
Right.
frame. I probably had the date wrong.
Yeah. So, and
Fact check,
like I said,
fact check.
yeah, because when I did my dates of looking up all the dates of all these groups that it came across as, oh, that's our 1980s kind of representative. And I see it as the representative of starting this new with horns, with other groups, with the music from different countries, Africa, the Middle East, and obviously you can hear the Peter Gabriel, obviously,
Paul Simon,
Paul
Graceland.
Simon with Graceland, and then Africa, so yeah, no, this is a fantastic song. I'm a huge Talking Heads fan. Wait till we get to Remains in the Light. They have some good songs on there. So now my next song, I brought it down a little from all that energy of those two songs to Days Like This by Van Morrison. Obviously, Van Morrison is, he's just an icon. Is once you hear his voice, I always kind of equate him, and I know this is some sports analogy, of like a Tony Gwynn, great player. You every time you see him or hear about him, think, yeah, that guy's great. But we often overlook him sometimes. But once you hear it, you're like, man, this guy's incredible. And this is actually one of his later songs, came out in 1995, and it was the official anthem of the peace movement in Northern Ireland in 1995, which I didn't know, and I looked up. I thought, man, that's pretty incredible. It's been used in a couple of movies. I mean, I'm not going to say, I'm not the expert on Van Morrison. Actually, it was Dave again who had the early all the early hits, all the early albums, and that's when I first got hooked with them. But anytime you hear Van Morrison, you're like, man, that guy's incredible.
Yeah, I've loved Van Morrison's music for a long time. I was really more for a very long time familiar with his earlier stuff, and I guess kind of I hadn't followed him. Like you said, he kind of, unless you're following, sometimes he's not exactly on the radar for everybody. He's not getting on the radio or whatever. And somebody gave me this CD back in '95, and I still have it, but I have a lot of good memories attached to that. And that song in particular, I really like. It's a good message. Just a fun song. And I continued to listen to him newer stuff after that because it's kind of reignited my interest. The only other thing I had to ask, I saw him one time in concert. He played at ACL Fest, and unfortunately, he was doing a thing where he was just playing songs off his most recent record, which was kind of like a cover album of old, like blues guys or R&B. I forget exactly, soul guys, whatever. But he a couple times he broke out a saxophone, and I'd heard before he played sax, and there is a sax, I believe, on this. And I'm wondering if he's the one who played it because he's not shabby. I mean, some people will, who know more for being singers will try to play something that's like a little questionable, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself a Van Morrison, know a lot of his stuff. You mentioned some of the earlier things, but every time I hear his voice, it's such a signature sound and has that bluesy kind of feel to it. So I wasn't familiar with this track, but I really like it, and it just goes to show you you can pick some song off of it that one of us doesn't know, that's not one of their top 10 or greatest hits, and it's going to carry because the artist is so good. I like the line in the lyric where he says, "You don't get betrayed by that old Judas kiss. Oh, mama told me there'll be days like this." I thought that was kind of neat, and I too honed in on that sax solo at the end, and not sure if he was playing it or not, but classic sound, and then I really enjoyed. It's always very subtle with Van Morrison with it, but he always has backup singers, and they're always so really good. If you ever just listen with the headphones, or you just focus in on the background singers, they're spot on. They're brilliant. Somebody said something to me the other day, or I heard something that was on the TV, and it said, in our minds and in how we process music and information, that even though we have lots of things going on at one time, we can actually only focus one at a time. So like when we're listening to a song, I'll just point this out. I'll have to come up with a reference and get more specific. But essentially, as you're listening to a song, you're listening and you might be going from the bass guitar to the guitar to the vocal to the drum to the whatever, but you're really only doing them in sequence one at a time. Even though you're hearing everything together, your brain is really focusing it. So what you can do is uber focus too. And I've done this before, where you're listening to songs and you don't have a mixing board in front of you where you can take one down and add, put them in there. But if you just focus on that one instrument or that one function, you'll catch things you've never heard before. You'll listen to that song 100 times and you'll go, whoa, I never caught that there's a wood block clanking, in the background, or another instrument that you barely heard. And we've heard you say both of you say some of this, like, oh, was there like a xylophone in there? Was there? It's because you were focusing on for that moment and heard it, and maybe I didn't, or Mike didn't, or whatever. So I thought that was an interesting concept of how we listen to music. Anyway, long way around it, but I enjoyed it.
Good points.
Okay, so the next selection I had was Chicago. Again, pretty much safe bet with the horns. There were so many things, great songs to choose from, and I was going to probably do Saturday in the Park, or one of those. But then I said, no, I'm going to go with Does Anybody Really Know What Time It Is? And didn't really even realize at what point that came out in Chicago's anthology of music, and it was right at the end of their first album that they cut the track, but it wasn't really released until their second album. So it came out as a single after their first album. And again, it was the same producer that produced Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I mentioned his name, James how do you pronounce it? Guercio, I think is how it's pronounced. But he produced that second album for Chicago. And again, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm picking Grammy winners here. 3 of my songs have won Grammys for the best albums. So and this was no exception. It won as well. What else was I going to say about this? Again, they had this kind of kicked them off for a string of hits in the early 70s. So when you hear that sound, you hear the horns, it's Chicago right off the bat. And so I figured this playlist had to have at least one Chicago tune on it. And but by the way, they weren't called Chicago. On their first album, they were called Chicago Transit Authority, and they were going to get sued or something because of the transportation thing. So that's when they dropped the Transit Authority and just went with Chicago. Cool fact.
No, like I said, Chicago's been a staple in our household forever. The horns were always great. My brother, I think, had the greatest hits. I've mentioned that before. So yeah, and my random run in again. I talked about I saw them at my ex-wife's Christmas party. They were the group, and you could stand 2 feet in front of them. But the other random one is a couple of years ago, we went to a Bowling Green Notre Dame game, and prior to the game, the Notre Dame band plays in front, and their guest happened to be Chicago. So Chicago, here I am seeing Chicago play with the Notre Dame band, and of course, then they played at halftime. I think the connection there was a professor from Notre Dame had taught one of them before or helped them in their arrangements. So, but I always seem to have these random run-ins with Chicago. Never saw them at a concert, but see them at a football game and at a Christmas party. But yeah, such a great song, and of course, it's just a classic song that you never get tired of.
Yeah, I love Chicago. Have for a long time. At least their older stuff. They've gone through a few changes in the more recent years, but they're still there. And this one I had heard so much over the years that it's like I have it memorized practically, and it's strong to me to this day. I love that song. Some of others, it's like, okay, don't really do that again. But this one, yeah, I love it. There's not much more I can say about that. A lot of talented guys in this group, and yeah, I appreciate it. Which brings me to my next one. So went to some ska here. This is the Specials, "A Message to You, Rudy," which is actually a cover song, and Dandy Livingston, I believe, is the name of the guy who did it about a decade before them. And the name was slightly reversed. It's like "Rudy, a Message to You" or something. Anyway, it's pretty obvious what the song is about. Somebody's saying, "Get your act together," and it's basically the same verse, I think, 3 times in a row. And it's a pretty stripped down song, but I've loved it for years. These guys went on to put a lot more songs out. Many of them were covers. Rudy comes from the term "rude boy," which I won't even pretend to precisely describe what it is, but it came out of Jamaica and then made its way to England. And among other things, people who were into ska, they would wear these suits, thin ties, and these, I don't know how to describe these hats, but it was kind of like a thing that, and they were kind of known as rude boys. And there's more to it than that. Again, I won't try to define it, but yeah. The other thing is this is their first record, and this whole record was produced by Elvis Costello. Yeah, I love it.
Well, I liked it too, and that whole ska sound. But I'm realizing now that's been around a while. But this band in particular was in the late 1970s. So even before a lot of these other ones that came after them, they were probably one of the first to put that type of sound together. This song itself had a little slower, a rock steady kind of beat to it than maybe a fast punk version of it, but I liked it a lot. In fact, it ties a lot to. I'll probably say it again here when Jose talks about the English beat coming up, but very similar. I mean, they're the time frame that they were starting out was about the same time, and so their music is very, very similar. I kind of picked up on that, but no, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great tune, and you mentioned Elvis Costello thing. That probably made it even better. That he produced that album.
No, obviously I'm a huge ska guy, but when I was first introduced to ska, when I was during our Richland College years, and I don't think it was you, Mike, but it was the entertainment editor guy who I always forget his name. Jesus, like John Garcia or something. You hate sound.
That's him.
Was that his name? Anyway, he was the one that turned me on to this album or this group, because I think we were in the newsroom one day, and he's like, "Hey, have you heard this, Jose?" And I'm like, "Oh no, what is this?" I had never heard ska before. I had never heard anything like that. And all of a sudden, and of course, the song that eventually it became a hit, although they had bigger hits, but "Mirror in the Bathroom." And I was like, wow, what is this sound? What is this? And so that really got him. And then I bought, of course, their next 2 albums and just loved them immensely. So yeah, this is one of my, your group is, I'm talking about my group, but in correlation with yours, this was kind of the influence to them. And like you said, they didn't get the recognition that Twist and Crawl got, that I'm going to be talking, that I've been talking about by the English Beat. But you know, they still, it's that same great sound. But obviously, a lot of good sound was coming out at that time from, you know, England. And so, of course, that goes into my, you know, Twist and Crawl by English Beat. Like I said, it was Mike who kind of, you know, I'm sure Mike had played some, or because I know that one guy did. So John Garcia, I shouldn't say that one guy. That's terrible. He was only there for like a semester, wasn't he? So, but yeah, just a great song and two great ska sounds.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're next. I'm sorry.
that's fine. That's fine. I had heard of them separately, probably. Well, I worked in restaurants for a long time before and during college, and you hear a lot of music in those kitchens, and have managers coming back to tell you to turn it down all the time. But that was one that somebody introduced me to. The album Special Beat Service was a favorite, and they had I forget that wasn't their first album, I don't believe, but anyway, they yeah, I love it. Mentioned Mirror in the Bathroom, and Save It for Later is another one I like. Any one of those we could have played with because they all have horns. But nice to go back. I'm gonna have to dust off one of the records and listen to it now.
Oh yeah, Tears of a Clown. Just a lot of great songs. Yeah, and they're still touring. You know, they're not all the originals, but they're still touring as well. So just a heads up. Mainly in England, mainly in Europe. But I had a chance to see him a couple of years ago, and or a couple of years ago, 10 years ago, and didn't go, and I kind of regret it. So.
Well, when you put the song on, I had forgotten that I had forgotten it. I guess, you know, it's one of those ones that was way back in my mind, and I'm like, I know this song. I know that maybe it was on one of our tape playlist or something. I don't know, but this song, when you put it on, it brought me back in time. I went back and I'm like, right, I remember this song. I remember jumping around to it or whatever when I was at parties, and I even think that maybe they opened up for somebody that I saw, but I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was REM, or maybe it was the I don't know, the Pretenders, somebody that I saw a show and maybe they opened up for them, but can't remember. Those brain cells are now gone. But yeah, they toured with that with a lot of bands, the Police, the Clash, David Bowie, Talking Heads you mentioned already, and so they had their day for sure. But that leads me into my last selection, and we've talked a lot about you know, ska and punk and R&B and jazz and classic 70s horns and even love vibes and all those kind of things. And then I put on this, and I put it on because the Alan Parsons Project is one of my favorite bands. And we sometimes maybe forget that with the orchestration and the things that they do, they have horns in lots of their songs. And it was probably the horns that first grabbed me on this album, which is The Turn of a Friendly Card. It was the first time I had heard Alan Parsons. Actually, maybe the second time I had heard about, because I had heard a couple of songs on FM radio, but I didn't know who it was, or I just didn't really connect it yet. And then that's when I went over to a friend's house, Tommy Topol, and he pulled out the vinyl, put this on his rack stereo, and just blasted it. And I was hooked ever since. And so it's not in your face horns. It's kind of subtle, but it's got that thing at the end. You know, it's a nod to the gambling industry in Las Vegas. And, you know, some of the lyrics says, "There's a sign in the desert that lies to the west where you can't tell the night from the sunrise. And not all the king's horses and all the king's men have prevented the fall of the unwise." You know, so the whole album is a theme album that talks about gambling and getting lucky and the turn of a friendly card and all of that. And so I kind of like that. And again, maybe it didn't go with all the other funk and jazz and things like that, but still a classic favorite of mine. So I thought I would throw it on the end.
Now, talk about getting transported back in time, like you said, Dave. First of all, you're the one who probably played my first Alan Parsons, and of course, anytime you got in the car with Tom Topol, you were going to hear Alan Parsons most of the time. I mean, he was just kind of obsessed with them. But and of course, this song is as great as all the we hear all the other Alan Parsons, but this is one of those, like you said, more subtle songs, but really effective songs, and of course the effective use of the horns just an overall great song. And like I said, it took me back to sitting in your room, and I know you put this on before, so yeah, it really is one of those great songs that takes you back in time.
Yeah, same for me. When it's one of those bands, at least for me, you hear the first little bit and you know who it is. I've gotten so familiar with, kind of like with Chicago. It's like when you hear Chicago, it's like there's no doubt that's Chicago. With a few exceptions, but some deeper tracks. But continuing what you guys said, I think I said this to you before, Dave. But when I think of when we're all listening to this stuff, I think of you listening to this, because I know you got it from Tom, because you, over the years, when I was involved with tapes, you put these songs on, so they're kind of always connected in my mind. Also, my interest, funnily enough, in that band came from my mom, because she, in the early mid '70s, had the first few albums of theirs that I at least knew of, I, Robot and Tales of Mystery and Imagination. And I remember the songs, just like the effects and the lyrics, particularly the stuff that Edgar Allan Poe. I'm like, what is this? What are these guys doing? And I actually became a fan, started reading Edgar Allan Poe out of that. I didn't discover I, Robot till later, but yeah, so I love it. I can't say anything bad about it. I had forgotten I knew this song too. I mean, I had heard this, and there's some other songs on this record that got some airplay, but this one, I think this is, I'll stick my neck out. The song, what's it, Games People Play, which got a lot of the airplay. I like this better than that. I mean, to me, it was more kind of, I don't know, mainstream. I like this as a better vibe. So it's the third time I've used that word today.
No, I agree with it. No, I agree with you for sure. It has a great vibe to it, and like I said, it's not like the hits. It's a little more subtle, a little more interesting. Is how I look at it.
And so I rounded the thing out, and I think maybe erroneously, Jose said early on that we agreed no instrumentals, because I certainly didn't get the memo, because this next one's an instrumental. Actually, I had it on my list. It was the only instrumental I had on my list of possible songs, and it just didn't really fit in. I thought, well, maybe it's a good place to end if nothing else comes up. It's kind of a shortish song, and we're shooting for an hour on these things. This is the second time we've done this in these playlists, exactly an hour with this song. Okay, so let me tell you the name of the song. It's Charlie Parker, Just Friends. He did a lot of stuff in his very short life. Amazing musician, played with, just all the great people from back in his time. Bebop, I guess, is really what he came out of. And this song is a little unusual. He did a whole album, I believe. I have not heard the whole record, but I just know the song well, with string accompaniment. But that doesn't cover up his amazing playing. It's just like there's a little bit of strings coming in, all of a sudden he's just like out the gate and he's going. And I think it's a little more, can't think of the word I'm looking, not acceptable, but people can maybe get into it a little more than just some really long thing that, he's a lot of experimentation and going off on these angles as they each take the turns, and in a particular piece. So yeah, it's a little mainstream, I guess, in a way, but it's still one of my favorite of his songs. So, yeah, I said the names. Anyway,
Well, I think it was a great way to end the playlist with an instrumental. Yeah, I didn't know a lot about Charlie Parker and his music, and you said he actually he died fairly young in 1955, and I guess his nickname was Bird or Yardbird or something to that effect, and they said the Yardbirds maybe even got their title from that. But yeah, he played with all the big ones. In fact, to tie it back to the Billy Joel theme and the 52nd Street, 52nd Street was a big street where they had all kinds of jazz clubs in the 40s and 30s and 40s and stuff in New York, and they played at all these clubs. So all the greats, the Dizzy Gillespie's, Miles Davis, Charlie Parker, and then they all played at these various clubs along that strip on 52nd Street. And so again, I thought it was a great way to end the playlist.
No, I didn't say we couldn't have instrumentals. I just said I wasn't going to play an instrument. No, it's a
my
great.
bad.
Nah, it's okay. It's great, and that's what kind of reminded me that as I was going through this was in 1950, that none of us, and I don't know for whatever reason, no jazz fusion, no Miles Davis, no Branford Marsalis, none of that stuff. Not that we overlook it, but sometimes it's often overlooked, and could easily make the next list of all those things. And he was obviously one of the forerunners of jazz and all that kind of stuff, and influenced practically everybody. So yeah, so I thought Dave, and just gonna throw this out, I thought Dave, we had gone to see that movie about Charlie Parker that Clint Eastwood directed, which isn't the greatest movie, but I thought I had gone with you, but apparently not, because you didn't know about him. Or I might have seen it with Mike. I know I saw it with somebody. So
It might have been one of those 3-movie VCR tapes I used to have.
you might be
I
right.
know Forrest Whitaker played him, I think,
Right.
in his earlier roles.
So yeah. So now it's a great way, like you said, it's a great way to end it. It pays tribute to really, all these bands that we listen to, and all the horns and how important they are to, every decade, musicians use these horns. And so I thought it was a great way we ended it. I thought it kind of encapsulated everything that we went through. And I think we had one of the most wide variety of songs that we've had, we've played. I like going back and listening to all the other playlists because they're always so fascinating. And this one, is currently, I've been playing this every time I walk every morning, just to, just it's upbeat. There's some upbeats, and then of course you get the little laugh with the Deborah, and you get all those different sounds that are the Zanzibar and the Talking Heads. Like I said, in my mind, I'm already thinking of a song, thinking of a story, some sort of storyline. So all these songs are really, really fun to listen to. So I thought we did a great job.
I think it was good.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate it. So I don't know. Do you want me to wrap it up?
Sure.
Really just. All right. So we're done for this time. The next one I'll have the theme, and I've already decided, if you guys are interested, it's going to be cover songs, all cover songs.
Okay.
And that's a wide open topic, but I have a few favorites. So, and they're not all old. So anyway, so yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, that's it. I'm just appreciate you, anybody who's watching this, and check out the playlist.
Okay.